unlocking your world of creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator, Mark Stinson. This episode is brought to you by White Cloud Coffee Roasters, nestled in the heart of Idaho's mountain wilderness, where every bean tells a story of adventure. Discover the difference in their premium beans, meticulously roasted to capture the essence of the mountains. Now, listeners of our podcast can get an exclusive 10% discount. Just use the promo code CREATIVITY at checkout. Visit whitecloudcoffee.com and use the code CREATIVITY.
Welcome back, friends, to our podcast, Your World of Creativity, where we uncover insights and ideas and innovations from creative professionals in all kinds of industries in all kinds of places around the world. And I'm so happy today to be stamping our creative passports in Houston, Texas, with my guest, Chris Tripoli. He's got a 45-year plus career in the hospitality industry, and we're going to be talking about all sorts of things in restaurant, concept development, consulting, podcasting even. Chris, welcome to the show.
Oh, happy to be here. Thank you so much, Mark, for having me.
It's going to be such a fun conversation, exploring the creative side of restaurant concepts. How we come up with the ideas, how we maintain our positivity and our creativity in the depths of the operations. First, you've developed all sorts of award-winning concepts and consulted on even more. What do you think the key elements of a great hospitality concept are?
What I've found over the years is that there is a similar formula. Restaurants or any type of hospitality, they vary so much, whether it is a small counter service, whether it's full service with servers and bar and banquet rooms, whether you have different things you're creating off-premise catering, or whether you have a event space, bar, entertainment venues. So there's all different kinds of things that fit in hospitality creation. But what we've found is that whether you're large or small, whether it's a big budget or small, there is a formula for success that we try to help people stick with. And that is, it starts with people. You've got to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right people. Now, the right people aren't usually your best friend or somebody who does exactly what you do. Sometimes that's a problem. Two chefs get together and say, this is great. We met in school. We became running buddies. Now we're going to open up a restaurant together. Sometimes when we work with the people part, we're trying to help them put the puzzle together. And creation requires different viewpoints. And so if your team is basically just you times three, we're missing. So it starts with the people, put the puzzle together to make sure you're getting some, operations, finance, as well as culinary around the table. And that'll help you stay focused. Then, of course, the second one is product. Obviously, what we're wanting to do on the product side is fitting in with an existing buying habit so that you're creating something that either fits in with the growing fast casual or the successful neighborhood hangout coffee, bakery, cafe, or the after work neighborhood bar. The product has to fit in with an existing consumer demand and then has to have its own unique point of difference. What's your uniqueness? What's your point of difference that you're offering? So that's a big part of the creativity. Then the third part is trying to make sure that this idea, now that we have the right people and we're excited about the product, making sure that we can develop consistency. So we're going to need processes and procedures. How are we going to create a system so that we know whatever it is we are baking or importing or whatever seasonal cocktails we're going to create, we know we're going to be able to create consistently on a Wednesday afternoon and next week on a Tuesday lunch. We've got to create process and procedures in order to do that. Now, if we do those three Ps, if we get the people right, the product working, and we get process and procedures, we've got a great chance of getting profitability. And that's really what you're trying to create in hospitality. You're trying to hit the bullseye, so to speak. It isn't good enough anymore just to throw a dart and hit the target. In order to really be profitable, you've got to, connect with the guest in enough ways for them to realize they've got to come back. And by doing so, then you've created something that can be profitable.
I love those, Chris. And it's a nice twist on the 4 marketing Ps that I've learned and used my entire marketing career. And what I like about it is You start thinking about it as a restaurant or a cafe, you broaden that out to any hospitality up and down the Vegas Strip even. But you also then can extrapolate that to almost any creative business, and that's what I love about it. You've worked in so many of these food type settings. I think about restaurants, yes, but airports, parks, arenas. I was reading about even medical centers that you've been in. How do you adapt? You've got those 4 pillars, but how do you adapt those to the unique demand of those kind of individual environments?
That was my most fun part, actually, looking back at the amount of years I was able to do this. And I think we as a team in my restaurant development group worked on well over 100 different concept startups. So we really got to help people with their funneling and get their creative juices from passion to idea, and then from idea into reality. And to answer your question, how to twist that to get that into a unique environment is all in a matter of adjusting to the customer demand. That's our challenge, was to get traditional food service operators into non-traditional environments, say a park or an airport, or a campus, or yeah, a tunnel system in a medical center. It was how do we adjust what it is you're doing to meet the consumer demand at that point? So you've really got to understand your target customer. If that person is a medical employee or a hospital visitor, the certain amount of time that they might have, their comfort zone, what's convenient for them, what's the amount of money they want to spend. You've got to understand that and then adjust your concept to make it work for them.
Mhm.
We've done that countless times with the traveler. Airports now have become meccas for food service and retail, and 30 years ago was always overlooked. In fact, those
Uh,
of us who through the airports, we go
absolutely.
insulting,
I wish
a la
we could find something to eat at a price, yeah.
yes,
But,
and then you're
as
settling
you're
between
talking
a
about adjusting to the customer, though, how many times have I sat at the airport Chili's and go, "Do they recognize that I'm in an airport? We might have to speed this up a little bit because I got a plane to catch."
That's exactly right. And things have really gotten interesting there where now there's the ordering from anywhere in the terminal. There's
Mhm.
the online apps that people are using in airports. There's the prepackaged grab and go. So people aren't even waiting. They're going to grab. Everyone's getting on the plane now with the Panera bag, the Chick-fil-A sandwich, the Cinnabon.
Yeah, for better or worse. I'm like, "Did you
Yeah,
bring enough for all of us?"
and they never do.
No, that pizza is wafting across the
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for that.
yes,
I'm sitting here with my whatever chicken salad sandwich. I'm
yes.
smelling your custom deluxe pizza. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I love that. Chris, you were mentioning fast casual as a trend now, but what other emerging trends? Obviously, we're opening up not only the restaurant press, but business press overall. Places like TGI Fridays and Applebee's and places like this are contracting where they used to be expanding every day. What are the challenges that are creating these changes or these new trends emerging in hospitality?
You bring up a really good point. You brought up a couple of names that were pretty much household names. TGI Fridays, for example, really hits me hard because I remember them in their heyday in the 80s. And some of our listeners might be too young for that one, but if you were around then, you knew that brand. They were on point. They had their policies and procedures and systems. They were very profitable. They were attracting the right talent. And it was because they were doing then what they stopped doing. And that was continuing to improve, continuing to create. The world of creativity in the hospitality business is a two-step process. There's the initial creation, that we talked about, putting your team together, your product, making sure you understand your target, hitting the bullseye. But the winners are the ones that know that you got to continually improve. You have to continue to grow and you have to keep the creative juices flowing because if you don't grow with the market, if you don't continue to create to interest the new diners, you might find yourself 4 years or say, as some of the brands that you mentioned, 40 years later on the street corner wondering where did everybody go?
Mhm. Yeah, the adapting is tough because you say we have our process, we wanna stay true to our brand, but then the market moves.
And you don't ever want to shut down the creativity process of our industry. So those that continue uh, to improve, those that continue to get their team together and engage with how are we reading the market today? Now, how are we going to create the experience that bonds with them? Sometimes it's a design issue. Sometimes it's a marketing issue. Sometimes it's a product issue. Many times it's a combination of the three.
Mm,
And when you see the independence operators, they seem to do that better, I think, than the larger chains.
yes.
Do that where they keep their team engaged and they always want to adjust their product, their people, their engagement of people, their training of people, so that they're creating an experience that bonds with the today customer.
And you talk about those design tweaks and evolutions. I think of another brand I was reading about, and that's Cracker Barrel. Obviously, this ubiquitous country store, more things than you can imagine per square inch in a, a Cracker Barrel store. But people have said, hey, we got to move on because they
Mhm.
could be stuck.
Yeah. And there are ways, and that's a good example. There are ways of understanding the core concept. What is it that people need to see when they hear that name? So, how do we always stay true to the core concept as we grow? And yet, underneath that umbrella, how can we create? How can we modify so that we're interesting enough to hold on to that customer? So, if it's modifying the offerings, if it's changing the design of the general store, if it's creating an atmosphere that's still true to what Cracker Barrel wants to be, value, family, country. Yeah, they can send out that message with their design, their menu, their environment, and their service style. But they can obviously adjust the size, the flow, their offerings to meet what people are looking for today.
Mhm. And there's so many sources of these ideas and consulting out there. You've contributed to restaurantowner.com. Yeah, you're a longtime member, if not a leader in the Food Service Consultant Society International. So you're also a mentor. I think about people who might be entrepreneurs and aspiring restaurateurs listening to the show, or even an audience. We talked a little bit about people who were successful in one business and say, I think I'm going to open up a cafe. Present
Happens
present
all the
company
time.
included. So,
That happens
uh,
all the time. Isn't that crazy?
yes. How do you guide somebody through this process?
Okay, excellent point. We meet with a lot of people, just like you said. They're very successful in other businesses. For some reason, they just didn't like it. Can't wait to take early retirement and go open up a pizza joint because I don't know, their mother-in-law's got a great marinara sauce or something.
That's right.
We've heard that. Or they want to open up the little neighborhood bar because I missed that atmosphere I had when I was in my small college town and I got to get that back to whatever. That's another true story that I heard. So what we've got to do immediately is help them define their purpose because too many times their idea is just driving the bus. They can't sleep at night because they can visualize this pizza joint. So we have to say, okay, what is the purpose? What's the role? Who are the people? What role are you going to play? And then what roles do you need around you? We call this process funneling, for lack of a better term. But when people are new to our industry, we say we're going to sit and we're going to throw all these ideas that you have about where it should be, what it should be, how big it should be, how much things should cost, what's on the menu. We're going to funnel it all and organize it into a way that's going to define your purpose. So what is it that is supposed to happen? And by doing that now, quite honestly, sometimes people have a realization that, whoa, this is going to take longer than I thought. This is going to cost more than I thought. Maybe I need to rethink the idea. Or they're going to realize this is a little bit more detailed than I thought. This is going to require a lot of time and a lot of effort. I enjoy baking, but I don't know if I want to get up at 5 in the morning every day. Sometimes people get talked out of it, and that's okay. Funneling is meant to do that. I lived all these years under the topic, so to speak, of everybody needs to eat in restaurants, hopefully more than
Mm,
they currently are.
mhm.
But not everybody needs to open one. It isn't for everybody. So that's the approach we take when we meet with people coming to this industry from others.
Yes. And you mentioned resources. This is not a bottomless wallet often. And people think all I have to do is buy this equipment or pay this rent. And I think even the people side of the budget is a little elusive sometimes.
Yeah.
How do you address the resources part of that discussion?
We split that in half. We take a look at resources, meaning financial, and we come up with preliminary estimating as they're funneling, as they're giving me their initial thoughts. We're immediately doing preliminary capital budgets. It's very preliminary, but at least it helps paint the picture. And so we paint that back. You're looking for this kind of size, this kind of capacity. You're looking at where this type of a location. Okay, we're in this type of a cost range. You're looking at this style of service. Okay, then your role is going to be this. What type of management team are you going to be looking for? Here's the cost on that. So we're beginning to build what is a very preliminary, but then it gets more and more exact as we go through the process. But then the second thing that you brought up, though, the other thing about resources is we hit them right from the get-go that this is an industry where people love to learn from each other.
Mhm.
And there are resources out there. Restaurantowner.com is a great one. State associations are another. We tell people to actually visit with people in the industry where they're currently going out and eating, the managers that they know, owners of their favorite Friday night hotspot. Talk with them about what your idea is. They'll have a cup of coffee and walk you through a day in the life. Sometimes they'll even have you come on in and spend the day because not everyone really needs to be experienced heavily in the restaurant industry to be successful, but everyone should spend some time in it just to get the feeling of the multitasking and the guest service requirements, what your feet are going to feel like after 10 hours standing on quarry tile in a kitchen. You should get a little bit of that feeling beforehand. And so we suggest all of that. And we even give them a list of resources to check out, websites to join, webinars to download. So this way they realize, wow, we can learn from the industry. And they can.
Yeah, and the formalities of associations are such, but just that casual networking. You're right. Sometimes we get so caught up in the competition of it all, but we could have coffee with the person down the street and compare notes, right? There's a lot more co-opetition than there is competition, I think, in most businesses. And again, I extrapolate that beyond restaurants and cafes to almost any kind of business.
I would hope so. Yeah, I would hope so because it's just great. And my life experience has only been hospitality. So I know really nothing about being successful in other lines of work. I just started working in the industry as a teenager and pretty much never left it. So I was fortunate to work, to manage, to own. And then after owning, to start doing restaurant development work for others and consult and educate and write. But everything has always been hospitality. And I have seen that time and time again that people will be giving of time. They will sit down. They'll tell you what they've learned. They'll tell you what they've done that they liked. They'll tell you what they have done that they would never do again. And so it's good for people to take advantage.
And I think listeners, if you're wondering, what would I say? What would I ask? I'll refer you to a past episode with my friend Jeff Wetzler, who wrote a book on how to ask. So there's all sorts of ideas that you could get. So if you wanted to go back and find that. Speaking of podcasts, you have your own. You're hosting The Corner Booth, which is a great visual I have of you sitting in the corner booth with your guests talking about the industry. What are some memorable or surprising lessons you've learned from your guests on your podcast?
Oh, yeah. A corner booth has been fun. Yeah, thanks. We do nothing but interview people who are leaders or current upstarts that are independently owned restaurants, talking about entrepreneurism in restaurant, bar, hotel industry. And what we've learned from their stories is phenomenal. We've learned of, say, some of the concepts that maybe would not have happened. I'm thinking of Johnny Caraba, for example, who in our podcast explained to me that he was really a reluctant restaurateur. He thought he was going to finish college and be an accountant. He was working with numbers. I think his first job was working in a convenience store, running the register and doing the books for his uncle. But then his other uncle, Damien, got him interested in a restaurant. They went together, they opened up Carrabba's, and I thought, oh my God, you could have stuck with your formal education and we would have had a Johnny Carrabba as an accounting partner somewhere in a downtown office building inst-
The story would have taken a turn.
instead of this fantastic Italian concept that was developed years ago. Yeah, that comes to mind. I'm also struck by the successful upstarts. I love talking to the people that are in their second, third, fourth year and they're settling in and they share things from their creative process. They look back and say, my initial idea was this and this. And how did it work out? How much of the initial idea is really successful with the guest? Did they really hit the target and the guest saw what was behind their creation? How much modification took place? And so those are the ones that I think particularly resonate with me because there is so much interest in starting a small restaurant, cafe, or catering or food truck or something. And so to catch them after they do it and have them recap the creative process, the opening process, and share their story, what they would do again, and what they learned, what they certainly wouldn't do, are fascinating to me.
Yes. What a great conversation. Before we close, Chris, want to make sure people know where to connect with you and learn more about your work. Where can we find your work?
You can find me on therestaurantclinic.com. It's a website, a small group of professionals that are helping people with their creativity, getting idea to opening, or helping the existing operators with their productivity and leadership development. So you can find me on that website, or you can just email me directly, Chris, that's CHRIS, at Chris Tripoli, TRIPOLI.com.
Fantastic. We'll put those links in the show notes, folks, so you know where to find it. Chris, as we wrap up, let's go back to the beginning then and say we're focused on the creativity behind concepts. You've got to come up with the ideas and organize them and get the confidence and the connections and the
Mhm.
capital to launch it. But what is the creativity that drives innovation in hospitality today?
I think what drives that, the successful people, I think would tell you what drives the creative innovation is fear, fear of mediocrity. Once you get there, the worst thing you can do after opening or after operating is to start accepting I'm busy enough. I'm making enough. I have enough good people. Because the moment we seem to be a little self satisfied, the moment we are shutting down innovation, the moment we stop challenging ourselves, the moment we stop creating. So I know, I think if the successful operators I worked with, if they were here, they would say that they don't fear things that people would assume you would, like growing competition. That's something you can manage. They don't fear increasing costs or a tightening of the labor market. What they fear is mediocrity because they know that they've got to continue to improve, and accepting status quo shuts down the creative innovation.
Fantastic. That's very motivating and very encouraging. You've given us a lot of that creativity and spark that we need to stay positive because oftentimes the challenges in a restaurant business, meeting all those P's that we mentioned, keeping the people and even all the way to the purpose, keeping
Yeah.
that in the forefront is often challenging. And so you've given us a lot to think about. Can't thank you enough, Chris.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Great to be here.
Yeah, my guest has been Chris Tripoli. His website and business, the Restaurant Clinic, and his podcast, Corner Booth. Be sure to check them all out. We've talked to him about creativity, lessons learned, and how we support each other in our entrepreneurship. And we've talked about a changing world and how to stay in step and ahead of the step in these emerging trends. But mainly, we focused on the art of our concept development, and that crosses all sorts of creative endeavors. And Chris, we
Yeah.
really thank you for your insights and experience.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And we want to thank our sponsor, White Cloud Coffee Roasters. They've sponsored our podcast now for quite a while, and you can enjoy a 10% discount when you use the code creativity at checkout. So visit whitecloudcoffee.com to explore all their exclusive blends. And come back again for our next episode as we talk to another creative leader about how they get inspired, organize their ideas, and gain the confidence and connections to launch their work out into the world. So until next time, I'm Mark Stinson, and we'll keep unlocking your world of creativity. Bye for now.